small groups, but I want to move us to our next piece. I want to hear from our panelists. And I want to introduce you to this idea of cultural immersion across the bridge. So we lead, one of the things we do, you saw in the video, is we lead cultural immersion trips to other parts of the world. China, Tibet, Egypt, Honduras, and Kenya. And the reason we do that is that we want people to really experience other cultures in a way that they start seeing the world from a different perspective. Because when you do that, then you can maybe start seeing the lens through which you see the world. But you really don't need to go all the way around the world to do that, right? You just really need to spend time talking to somebody who has a different life experience than you, whose situations are different than yours. And that can be enough. And so we started talking actually a couple years ago, and then last year at the racism event decided it was time to really try to put together a cultural immersion across the bridge and address the cultural and racial divide between Grand Haven and Muskegon. And so that's what we've been working on. And these are all panelists. Like I said, Jarrett couldn't be here, but otherwise our primary planners in the process. So with Jarrett and Dale working on the Muskegon side, and Carolyn and Shar working on the Grand Haven side, I'm going to turn things over. Dale will have double time that he can talk because Jarrett's not here. We'll deal with it.
Clearly not our expertise.
So he'll have about half an hour, and Carolyn and Charlene will each have about 15 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A. So go ahead, Dale, and feel free to stay and walk wherever you want to be.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning.
Thank you for braving the Death Storm 2020. You're in one piece. So I am not sure if I'm going to go for a half hour, but my lovely bride is sitting right over there, and I asked her earlier, how long am I going to talk, dear? And she just laughed. So, you know, yeah, if you roll me out there, depending on the topic, I'm good for as long as I need to be. So, I'll walk my way through my notes and share with you what I think is important. So just for in terms of ground rules for me, just because I am a black guy does not mean I'm an expert on racism. And it seems as though in many venues and environments, a panel like this will be prepared, and a black person will be trotted out because he's black or she's black, or she is of color, he is of color, and I think that demonstrates one of the issues that we have in this nation about dealing with race generally. Somehow the black person speaks for the entire race, and any white person or any person who is not of color is not held to that same responsibility. So I think that's unfortunate, and this panel does not do that. So I appreciate the fact that this panel is structured in that way. So you have a copy of my bio. That's also online. I can give you my web address and so forth. It's, some of that information is on the bio. Got other copies of that. And what I will share is just my take on how racism is bad for business, public safety, and community. That's what I titled my notes, and that's what I'll discuss. To do that, I'll give you some sense of who I am, what my path has been through my life, and how racism has impacted it, and how I and my wife have responded. So first of all, my wife and I lived out of this area for 35 years. So when we moved back, it was almost like we were moving to a new area. You know, I left. Now, don't hold this against me, but Reese Puffer High School. I am a proud Rocket, and I will tell anyone who wants to know that that's who I am. With the best marching band in the nation, or the state, depending on the year, by the way, so I'll just let you know that as well. But so we leave in 1973, come back, and it's just a totally different area in many ways. So when I left, I think the climate in this environment was different. It was significantly worse, much better now, but still lots of progress needs to take place. Let me back up roughly 25 years, actually, well, let's go about 35 years before I was born. my dad and my mother how they got to Michigan from Tennessee and West Virginia. My dad ran away from home, joined the U.S. Army, the segregated U.S. Army, around 1936. Because of segregation, because he was not allowed to fight in the war, I'm alive today. I'm not saying that racism benefited me, but the abject ignorance of people who would not think that someone with 20/15 vision who could shoot a fly off of a log 100 yards away wasn't able to do the things that you'd expect him to be able to do, that was embarrassing. So he made it, I'm here. He was running away partially from some of the issues that he faced in Tennessee. My mother was running away from some of the issues that she faced in West Virginia. Worked her way through Chicago, got married, through Detroit, through Bitley, Michigan. I don't know if anyone knows where Bitley is. You know where Bitley is, huh? So you've gotten out in the sticks, huh? Yeah, they made it to Bitley. And my dad was working at West Michigan Steel in Muskegon at the time. And it's like an hour and 45 minutes right from Bitley. It's a long way out there. So this is before I was born. They were doing that. That lasted 9 months. Dad came down here to buy a home. Could not buy a home in Muskegon in 1950 because he was black. So he, being a very motivated individual and who was not going to have people tell him what he could or could not do, purchased a home in Twin Lake. And I'll say this as well. Twin Lake, meaning old Twin Lake, where the little blinking lights are, if you've driven there. When I say I'm from Twin Lake, a lot of people will say, oh, you're from Lakewood. No, racism. Black people live in Lakewood, white people live in Twin Lake. There were black people who lived in Twin Lake, like my dad. He bought 56 acres and a lake in 1950 because he was able to manage his resources, and he was in an area where he was not required to do things that white people were not required to do. He had cash, bought the property, and some of that still in the family. Bought that property. I was born there. As much as anyone who's impacted me throughout my life, he is that person because of what he had to live through and what he did to get to a point where he could raise his family, not without, given the topic here, racism, being a part of our family upbringing, it was, but because he was a World War II veteran and owned any number of very high-powered weapons, people knew that if they were going to cause us any trouble, they got about as far as our driveway, and then they were turned around forthwith. So that I mean, I grew up with a person in my life like that. Many people don't. Many people grow up. I hear a lot of black people say, well, you know, one of the reasons that we behave when we do, in the way that we do is like we fear someone harming us. It's not my dad's problem. It was not my mother's problem. Not my uncle's problem. You know, I learned how to shoot a gun at age 4. Age 4, not because I was in a gang. For old school people who know Chicago or Detroit or some of the big cities, the Blackstone Rangers or the Mighty Disciples, you may not know those names, but they were the precursors to the Bloods and the Crips. We're talking in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Those gangs have been absorbed by other gangs. I don't even know where they are now. But my family didn't have any problem with them either because people knew how to stay away from folks who were stand-up people who respected themselves and who did things by the law, but also did not take others trying to take what they had away from them. So again, that's who I am. If you really want to know, the bio says I'm Dr. Somebody. I have a degree from Northeastern University, PhD and whatnot, but that's who I am because of my dad. If not for him, I wouldn't be here. So keep that in mind. So number 2, racism is bad for business, public safety, and community. This is kind of where some of my research or the research of some of my colleagues comes into play. And this is where my wife comes into play to a certain extent. I might ask her for some comments along the way. But, she just gave me the look. I don't think I'm gonna ask her anything. Sorry, dear. Okay. Well, let's just pass on that. Okay, I'll keep going. Okay, I'm good. Let me make sure I'm good here. So, okay, racism is bad for business. So my research as an academic is not on racism. There's a couple papers in one book that I wrote that has a component of that. But my PhD is entitled The transformation of crime statistics in police agencies. And there's a subtitle, the social, economic, racial, demographic, and something else dimensions of police behavior in America. So that was the title. I was interested in the Boston Police Department, which is where I worked for a number of years. They were interested in why they weren't able to really take the next step, why they were having issues in different neighborhoods in the city of Boston. And I was hired as the research director because they wanted to answer those questions, and they were legitimately concerned about that. So no matter how good or bad police agencies are, some are horrible, and some are pretty decent, some are, I'll say, good. I don't think there are any excellent police agencies in this nation. And this comes from a guy who's researched the issues for 30 years, written books, written articles, worked in the agencies, a sworn official of the Boston Police Department. So that I'm not just some guy with an opinion. And I part of why I'm where I am again is because I kind of detest people who put their opinions out there about me, about other folks, without any information or data whatsoever. So I didn't want to be that guy, which is one of the reasons I'm Dr. Nesbury. But there is an article that was written, and I'll give this information, share this either online or share this with Barbara. It's entitled, How Roadway Composition Matters in Analyzing Police Data on Racial Profiling. Police Quarterly, Volume 5, blah, 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 2002B. It was written by Jay Meehan, Albert J. Meehan, if you look him up, and Michael Ponder. And so these guys have been researching basically driving while black for about, well, since, I don't know, 1985, 1986. I met Jay when I was working on my doctorate, when I was working with the Boston Police Department. We had a consortium of researchers in Boston at Northeastern, BC, Harvard, BU. And we were all trying to answer some of those questions. Why was this occurring? And intuitively we knew why police weren't able to do certain things, but we wanted to answer those questions. But so Jay, I just tracked that research over the years. He moved to Michigan eventually and studied the city of Warren. Now, I don't know if Jay uses Warren's name in his research today, but back when he was doing the research, he had an agreement with Warren that he would not use their name in his research, but they were a large suburban community in a major metropolitan area in Michigan. So how many could it be?